everybody, welcome back to Around the Emirates podcast with Sara Mousa, where I speak to guests from across UAE about topics you want to hear about. Today, I'm joined by the awesome James. Hi, James.
Hey, how are you? How's everything?
All good, thank you. Thank you so much for being here. So, James Knight Paccheco is a really cool chef and co-founder of Group JKP. Really cool. Please tell me your story and how you got started.
So yeah, basically Group JKP is basically my name. So James Knight Pacheco. I'm half Venezuelan, half British. So that's the Knight is the British part. Pacheco is the Venezuela. And normally in South America, you have very long, extended names of the grandfathers and all of that kind of stuff. So basically, my dad decided to name all of us JAKP. So my full name is James Arthur Knight Pacheco. So yeah, and then all my sisters are JAKP. So we've all followed the same thing. And basically, I was born in Venezuela. At around the age of 9 or 10, we moved over to the UK. But throughout all of that time, I was surrounded by food and family. But I decided to study music first. So I studied to become a musician. And but throughout the time, I was working in kitchens and in restaurants. So I'd always been around hospitality. Um, and basically, it wasn't until I was around 18 or 19 that I had to make a choice, because basically I loved cooking, but my major, as it were, was drums or percussive instruments. And my dad was like, he was always good with his hands. He was an electrical engineer. So in England specifically, if you're good with your hands, it means you have to have a trade, like a carpenter, mechanic, something like that. And my dad was like, look, if you have a trade behind you and you become a chef, you'll never be out of a job. You can travel the world, and most importantly, everybody needs to eat. And
Very
he had
true.
a point, right? He had a point, So I was a bit, I didn't want to listen to him, but he was right. But the funny thing is, it was my mum who's the chef. My mum is, she's also a doctor of law. She speaks 7 languages, but she's the one who was in the kitchen and showing me things and all of that kind of stuff. So I was very fortunate to have that background. So in the end, I decided to go to college again and study for 3 years. And then the funny thing is that once you study hospitality in the UK, and you're graduated, you start from the bottom again in the industry. So you go from, washing the dishes, doing what they call the commie job, so picking herbs in a fridge for 12 hours, all of that lovely, lovely experiences. So yeah, and then essentially once I made a decision to become a chef, I wanted to work with the very best people in the world. And basically Michelin is, you know, the thing to do. So I ended up working in Michelin starred restaurants with some big names like Raymond Blanc, who's a two-star Michelin chef, and he's had 2 stars for 40 years. He was the one who taught Marco Pierre White to cook, and from that school and from 40 years, there's been a myriad of incredible chefs come from that place to then go and work for Gordon Ramsay himself, which was unbelievable. So yeah, I've worked all around in the UK, and then I came to the region here in 2012, and it was meant to be for 2 years. And the rest is history. Yeah, so it was. I mean, it's been an amazing journey, and to be honest with you, I love the region. I love the Middle East. I love the culture. I love the food and the people and the hospitality, because it reminds me of Venezuela. Uh,
Mhm.
Everybody's very warm. Everybody's very welcoming. They cannot do enough for you. When they welcome you, when you go to somebody's house for the first time, especially coming from an Arabic background, they really do everything to welcome the guest. And it's the same thing that we did in Venezuela. The neighbors or whoever came, you have to come. Table is full. even if you're stuffed, and they give you and give you, you know. So I love that about hospitality. Um, but I also love about how food and experiences can be ingrained as a core memory.
That is so true. That's such a beautiful point for you to make. The fact that you could see the similarities in the culture just through food and through those experiences. And as your dad so wisely said, everybody needs to eat, right? So it is a very important industry.
Mm,
And the fact that you have had such a colorful experiences, like the people that you've worked for are incredible kind of trailblazers in the hospitality industry. And having worked across borders, what would you say has been your biggest challenge?
I'm going to give you two. So I became a dad very young at the age of 15. So that was a big challenge. Um, so I had to make sure that I was looking after my daughter as much as I could, but also work in those environments and navigate my teenage years through becoming a dad. But that essentially made me a lot more responsible, and really wanted to push in that and have that drive to always, you know, be the very best. But at the same time, I think the biggest challenge I've found just generally in life, it's not necessarily about cooking, it's time management. So one of my chefs very early on said to me, time is your biggest enemy. It doesn't wait for you.
Very
And
true.
it sounds really silly, right? Um, but actually it's true. So it's the same way when you're managing a kitchen, or you're managing humans in a kitchen, or you're managing your own time. I think that's been generally the biggest challenge. Um, but I find myself in a very fortunate position that I'm grateful that I managed to travel a lot and to learn cultures and to learn about people. It really opened my mind. You know, I think it's such an amazing gift to learn about cultures, to meet different people, and again to break bread over a table. Doesn't matter what differences you have when you have a meal and you're sharing something. And if you have differences, for me, those differences can make a huge impact once you're at a meal, and you can really talk and grasp very different things. So, but yeah, those two have been my biggest challenge. So you know, becoming a dad very young, and then time management overall, I think.
100%. I definitely think that time management is a challenge that we all face across industries in general. Time definitely does not wait for us. Time is not our friend, and we have to be as respectful to time as we can just to know that like our time is precious. And thank you for
Yeah.
also being so candid about that story with your daughter. It is important for people to understand that, you know, it takes a lot for you to get to where you are today to get to your success story. So for you to be having able to overcome that and to use that as to harness that opportunity for good and
Mm.
as a beautiful story is awesome. And I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of great stories just then, but I'm curious if there's any kind of one or two stories that really stand out to you in your experience.
Well, I think the so again during my time when I was working for Gordon, uh, he was like an idol to me, and still very much is. You know, what he's achieved in his life is phenomenal to me, and he's such an incredible role model. But two things happened in the same week, right? So the first one is so the restaurant where I was working with him, and under his organization. If you can imagine, there was around 160 guests for lunch and dinner, right? So we would generally work from 6 in the morning to midnight most days, right? So it was very physical. Um, and one time I came in super early, but my job was to make the stocks. Now, I just want you to imagine, let's say 80 to 100 kilos of chicken bones, all frozen. And my job was to take them out of the boxes in the morning, super early, cold, freezing, put them in these trays, and then get them in the oven to roast, to make the sauces. which are really important. And there was about 8 to 10 different sauces. So I wasn't on the sauce section, but I was responsible for making the base stocks, which is a big deal. So to make a stock, it's a lot of work. You have to get all the bones together, roast them off beautifully, and then you have all the rest of the vegetables and mix it all together and then slowly cook it for about 10 to 12 hours. So, anyways, in that morning, I was having an amazing day. I put the chickens in 6:30, 7 o'clock, nice and high temperature, 180 to 200 degrees Celsius. So it's nearly 400 plus Fahrenheit. So I was like, great, let's get the chickens cooked. Everything's great. I'm having the most amazing day. I'm on service, cooking really well, and there's about 50 chefs in the kitchen, you know. So I'm just like, yeah, yeah, yeah. And then Nick, who's a friend of mine, still, is like, "What's that smell?" And this is at like 1:32 p.m. What's that smell? And I'm just like, "What do you mean, what smell?" And then, bang! It hits me. So the ovens were all around the kitchen. So I've got an oven, everyone else has got an oven, and each of the bones is in the oven. And then they start opening the ovens, and then the smoke comes. So all of the chicken bones I burnt during the middle of a Michelin-starred service in Claridge's, Gordon Ramsay at Claridge's, which was like the most famed restaurant at the time. So we had to literally I had to take each tray, which is 20 kilos, like outside and put water on them. So for the rest of the week, you can imagine what everybody was saying to me. But
Did Gordon
actually, at
Ramsay
the
ever
end of
find out?
no, thank God.
He
But
will now.
in a yeah, yeah, in the same week, I had to actually end up cooking for him at his house. So it was the same week where they have the London Marathon, and normally he has a party after the marathon because he used to run back then. Uh, so we were a few of the boys there. We were, we volunteered to go to cook at his house, and what was really amazing. So we did the barbecue. Everything was fine. It was really great, like super casual. But at the end of the barbecue, and I'm talking like maybe 6 p.m., 7 o'clock, I just sat down. I just happened to sit down in his house. We were just waiting, and I was on my own. And then he came and sat next to me. And he was the most normal, amazing human being you can imagine. He was super nice. Just first of all, he said, "Thank you very much." Then he was talking about his story. Uh, and it was a moment in my life which I'll never forget. Um, because you see him as this character on TV, but actually, when you sit down with him on a one-to-one basis, he was so humble and very, he's worked hard for where he's got to, but he's still incredibly grateful and he doesn't take it for granted. And
That's
you know,
beautiful.
sit. It was amazing to just be, and it was 5 to 10 minutes only, but that's been ingrained in my life forever.
Oh, I love that. What an incredible story. I mean, stories. Thank you for being so honest about your trial and error with the stock as well.
Oh my
But
God, haunts me every
it's
day.
it's interesting to know that even Michelin star restaurants can have issues too behind the scenes. So thank you for sharing
Oh, they do.
that.
They do. Trust me, they do.
Wow, that's crazy. But thank you so much for that short sharing that story. I think that hearing like we tend to put celebrities on pedestals, as you've said, we tend to put them on these podiums, and I kind of look up to them and like think that they're perfect or whatever, or see their personalities on TV. So it's really nice you're able to have that kind of candid moment with him, and that has carried with you
Mm.
till now. And that takes me to my final question for you today, James. Is there a final word of advice that you have for people that are kind of up and coming or considering you moving into the kind of the food industry?
Yeah, look, to be super honest, the food industry, hospitality generally, is a hard industry, right? long hours, physical. You miss all the birthdays, all the celebrations, all of that kind of stuff. You're away from your family, loved ones for most of the time. But the biggest takeaway I can give to anybody wanting to be in hospitality is that failure is a gift. The more you fail in this industry, the more mistakes you make, the more chances you have of succeeding. So even to this day, and I've been working as a chef, 25 years. I'm learning all the time. I'm still failing at things, but the best thing is that I'm learning all the time. There's never one day which is the same. And this industry has given me so much opportunity. And that's why I give back in any way I can to the industry, whether it's mentoring, whether it's my podcast that also highlights failures that people, CEOs, chefs, whatever it is, and talking about their food memories, because I just think food connects us all in a much deeper level than we just think. So for me, keep failing, because the more you fail, the more you will succeed.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing those wise words and also for taking the time to be so honest and just human with the audiences and just understanding and showing them that it's not the worst thing if you fail. If you have a bad day, like the industry is so hectic, but you guys are doing something so important. You're feeding people. And at the end of the day, as you said, breaking bread is one of the most underrated experiences that one can have. Like the food experience truly is a highlight of our days as humans. So thank you so much for sharing your story today, James.
No, thank you, Sarah. Thank you so much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.